Amandla Stenberg is back in the news because I think she wants to be. Let's talk about the Acolyte and how Amandla just can't get off of that internet here on That Park Place. Hello, I am Jonas J. Campbell, an investigative reporter for That Park Place, and here with me is cultural analyst Culture Casino. Culture, you ready to pony up to the table?
Of course, yeah. I brought my pony, my horse, my large horse, the Clydesdale. I brought them all.
You know what they need in gambling? They need D20 dice.
That's right.
Until they do, we can go to the authority on all things nerdy, Miss Amandla Stenberg. The Acolyte star Amandla Stenberg was not surprised about cancellation after Star Wars fanboy racist vitriol. It's funny, fanboy racist and vitriol are not in quotes, just Star Wars. Funny. The actor and cast experienced extreme and relentless attacks from trolls of the internet who apparently couldn't handle a strong black woman leading a series finale in the franchise. None of that is in quotes here from Kevin Dalek, who hopes to exterminate us all here from The Hollywood Reporter. The Acolyte star Amandla Stenberg revealed she is not surprised that the Disney Plus series set in the Star Wars universe was canceled after one season following the vitriol, prejudice, hatred, and fateful language. Fateful language. I think he actually did say that. The cast has received from internet trolls since the series was announced and through its cancellation earlier this month. Culture, would you say that a bunch of people saying bad things about the show is the reason that random people in, like, say, some Midwest corner of the earth here, that they didn't watch the show because some guys on Twitter didn't like the show?
No, I think people didn't like the show or didn't watch the show because they weren't interested in the show or they already knew what they were going to get. I mean, now at this point in time, I think everybody knows what they're going to get from Disney Star Wars and they're tired of it. So they stayed away. They also weren't interested in whatever story this is coming out of a galaxy that's supposed to be within the Star Wars galaxy in the early High Republic stuff, which nobody heard about nor cared about because they didn't even buy the books.
That's very true. I think a lot of people didn't understand that this was set way before everything else. I guess this is now the earliest point in live action for anything in Star Wars. Some of the outlets here are calling it a Star Wars offshoot. It says Star Wars The Acolyte very clearly on the title card there, though. Stenberg had dual roles in The Acolyte as twins Osha and May. Sometimes they didn't even change the costume, though, who fall on the opposite sides of the Force. I'm not really sure about that. They, in fact, seem to be in agreement many times, or they take turns just flipping back and forth, sometimes changing motivation several times within a 5-minute period. It's very strange. If you've watched the show, then you understand how quickly she does it, and with no apparent reason, making it even more difficult to tell them apart. They, in fact, have the same hairstyle, despite being two different people with two different lives. Very strange. The actress spoke out on her Instagram stories on Wednesday night about her experience with fans whose relentless vitriol made her feel compelled to respond to, as she says, honor my value system. Culture, was this the only response that she gave?
No, I mean, obviously we had a diss track video that gave us a pretty good sense of her sense of ethics and values.
Yeah, an expletive-laden diss track video right there. I'm going to be really transparent and say it's not a huge shock for me, Stenberg told her fans of the show's cancellation after one season. Well, she also told us. Of course, I live in the bubble of my own reality. I totally agree there. But for those who aren't aware, there has been a rampage of vitriol that we have faced since the show was even announced, when it was still just a concept. No one had even seen it. That's when we started experiencing the rampage of, I would say, hyper-conservative bigotry and vitriol, prejudice, hatred, and hateful language toward us. Was she originally announced with the show itself? I'm only thinking two names were attached at the start, one of them being Kathleen Kennedy, and the other being a person who was not referenced at all in Amandla's little videos here.
Did she forget all about the former personal assistant to Harvey?
Yeah. Leslye Headland, who worked for years for Harvey Weinstein and has not responded in any way and has not been asked about her time with Harvey Weinstein, which is fascinating to watch the media not ask her about working with one of the most notorious Hollywood producers who has ever existed, the progenitor of the Me Too movement here, the cause of the Me Too movement, some might say, the only name you might say, in the Me Too movement. And yet Leslye Headland has not been asked a single question on the record about that. So when someone says that there's hyper conservative backlash here, what's the word? Yeah, hyper conservative bigotry and vitriol, prejudice, hatred, and hateful language to us. For some reason, that one doesn't get brought up in articles like this. It's almost as if, despite the fact that every single time some of the bigger channels that talk about this, like Nerdrotic, constantly bring up the fact that Leslye Headland worked with Harvey Weinstein, it doesn't come up in articles like this. Does that seem intentional to you, Culture? Like that might be something that is being avoided on purpose?
Well, yeah, I would say you would consider that all of these trade outlets would be very well aware of who she worked for and for how long. And, well, since they're all owned by the same company, with the exception of the Wrap, they do seem to avoid letting everybody know just where Leslye came from. And they've tried to replace it with another person, I guess some kind of a producer or something that saw her work prior to her becoming somewhat popular. But that didn't really land well, aside from the fact that, he discovered her, but he passed her along to Harvey, who, went from there.
Mm-hmm. And if we could shred the credibility here of Hollywood Reporter any further, they're calling this the Acolyte. Don't look at the fact that they're saying The Phantom Menace and Star Wars up here. They're saying the Acolyte came from showrunner and Russian doll creator Leslye Headland, not mentioning anything about her history before that. A critical hit with a cast that focused on diversity. It also featured Jung-jae, Daphne Keane, Jodie Turner-Smith, and Carrie-Anne Moss, who hails from Canada. I guess that Canada is part of the diversity in this statement. That's kind of hilarious here. But they're saying it's a critical hit. You know what that really says to me as a longtime fan of Star Wars and watching things? The critics have zero taste whatsoever if this was a critical hit. Also, I don't see any critics who were talking about any aspect of the show outside of the diversity in this show. Culture, did any of that reach your ears or your eyes here? As you read a lot more than I do, which is saying a lot, because we go through a lot of articles in preparing these videos. Were there any critics in particular that were praising any specific aspects of the show outside of the diversity?
No, I don't actually recall them saying anything positive about it, other than, I guess, if you consider somebody like Grace Randolph, a critic who is often in writing on Rotten Tomatoes and maybe a few other places. I mean, she was talking about elements of the story here and there, but I don't think anybody here focused, not on any of these trades, focused on anything other than the diversity in various ways when they were making articles. That's an interesting question that I'm going to have to ponder more, but I think you're correct. I don't think a lot of conversation happened outside of that.
I'm trying to think of a single thing in this show that I would praise as elevated. I mean, it's genre fiction and it has the Star Wars name attached to it. I think if they kept the budget in line, something like this might have been renewed. But here we go. When the show premiered, online fanboy trolls decided to take it upon themselves to review bomb the show. Despite a strong critical response, user reviews of the series were abominable. It's unclear if this led to the show's declining ratings, but on August 19th, Lucasfilm announced that no further episodes would be produced. This was despite several major cliffhangers at the end of the season. I would say that this is admitting that there was a lot left to be told in the Acolyte world. I think the review bombing on the show, by the way, I don't like the term review bombing because it's kind of a loaded term that has multiple meanings. It's like a Rorschach test here. A review bomb might be a lot of people reviewing it because they have strong feelings about the show, but I think they want to say that the reviews are false. I get the impression here that this article from the Hollywood Reporter would rather have people be left with the idea that the show is good and the only people that hated it were hating it for reasons other than the quality.
Well, my argument to them would be the obvious one, which is if this show was good, you would have had more people watching it and it wouldn't have been canceled.
It's a very good point, because in the end, there are plenty of shows that have horrible review scores that continue on. I'm not going to try to insult any of our audience here, but NCIS, I don't put that forward as premier television. I'm not thinking that's going to be on HBO anytime soon. They're not breaking new ground on a show like NCIS, and still people show up week after week to see who has died in the Navy.
Yeah, I would say that has a certain rhythm and pattern to it that is satisfying to the audience that it gains. And I think if you were to maybe do something like that with a Star Wars show, you could be successful. This had none of those elements. It didn't have the benefit of being what they described it as a mystery thriller. And I was neither thrilled nor mystified. So
yeah. Well, it's interesting. I'm going to poke one more hole in what Amandla has said here. She concluded her post by musing on why society has become so divided that a lauded show like The Acolyte could vanish after one season because of fans' racism and fear. I'm actually going to say, if fans were divided, people would show up. The Last Jedi is a movie that divided fans. I'm going to say that The Acolyte actually united fans in a way that it never has before in not watching this show. But maybe I'm just a curmudgeon here on the internet. Maybe I'm a guy who remembers what Star Wars used to be like, or maybe I'm a guy who has watched countless hours of genre fiction and has said, this ain't it, baby. Culture, is there anything we need to add before we wrap this up?
I think what we need to add is that she used some words that I don't know if she knew what they meant. She also added adjectives that were unnecessary. I mean, I could go through and pick it apart far more than we did, but I think speaking extemporaneously is not her strong suit. There, finally got that in.
Yeah, I would rather hear what Jung-jae has to say about the show.
Me too.
Myself. I'm interested in whatever his next project might be. You know what's really fascinating? Until those last few episodes when they made his character weird and kind of creepy, he was actually someone that most fans, that for some reason, all of these articles ignore the fact that most fans were praising Jung-jae's performance and talking about how he was better than the show itself. So I don't know. Maybe they don't count Jung-jae as a minority here, except when it works in Disney's favor. With that being said, we want to throw this to our commenters. Do you think that Amandla's got a long career ahead of her, or is she just going to be in that list of actresses who can't keep their mouths shut, like Rachel Zegler, where poor Miss Zegler has managed to hack off every single possible fan of Snow White, creating a trailer that rumors are that one that's got 1 million dislikes at this point.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Amazing. That is not dividing the fan base right there. That seems to be a lot of uniting. Let us know your thoughts in the comment section down below. Like this video if you like this video, and if you would consider subscribing to That Park Place for all the news that should be fun.
Thanks for watching That Park Place News. For more information, consider checking out www.thatparkplace.com. And don't forget to subscribe, share, like, and send this out on your favorite social media accounts.